Hi, I'm David Camp, and I'm here to talk to you about including neurodiverse workers into self-directed teams. Why are we talking about this? Research has shown that neurodiverse workers are highly skilled and desirable, but many times deemed unacceptable for behaviors or specific needs. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Something about me. I spent 25 years at Eastman Kodak Company in Rochester, and I worked on several programs. One was the Instant Picture Program, which was Kodak's answer to Polaroid. This was a Skunkworks team project as a side effort. The first corporate installation of individual computer workstations in the central facility was put into place. I was instrumental in making that happen. There will be several terms when I talk that will probably be unfamiliar to you, and I will tell you what they mean later on in the program. I also worked on a blood analysis program. Kodak is typically known as a picture company, but in actuality, it's a chemical company. And they found a way to use photographic technology to analyze blood samples. Put this analyzer in place, a very large cross-functional team was put in place to do this, and I worked on that. I also worked, that Kodak also makes copiers, and I worked on a specific department in the corporate division of copy products to put in place a self-directed team. This was the first self-directed team that Kodak had put in place. After that, I worked at Ford as a consultant in Detroit, in Dearborn, on the Ford Explorer program. The standard for Ford putting a cross-functional team effort approached a functional team effort in execution because it takes 5 years to essentially bring a new vehicle to the market. What we're going to talk about is different types of teams, why, the definition of why we have teams, the purpose, the membership, supervision, advantages. I'm going to talk a little bit about Skunkworks, and then swing into the neurodiverse end of things as to what that exactly means from a business perspective and from a personal perspective. Then I'm going to talk about corporate culture and tie it all together in conclusions. So, what exactly is a team? A team is defined as a group of people who perform interdependent tasks to work towards accomplishing a common mission or a specific objective. How are teams formed? Well, upper management always is looking at ways to increase the bottom line. 5 questions really need to be answered at that point. Does the product fall within the corporate mission? What are the attributes and specifications? Will the public buy it? How much will it cost? How much will it cost to design, test, and manufacture? And how long will it take from inception to sales to do this? Those questions are answered, and a team leader to head the project is selected, and that person puts in place the team members that he feels are best suited to be successful in this particular venture. I like to think of some of this stuff as a 3-legged stool. You need all 3 legs to be stable, and that is the content of the product, how much it's going to cost, and how long it's going to take to do it. Typically, a good team leader will accept the fact that management gets 2 out of the 3, and that the team leader gets the 3rd, no matter which 2. to simply assume that the team is going to accept all three legs without question is doomed to failure. So, synergy. What is synergy? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's synergy. Cocktail of drugs typically is more effective than the sum of the effectiveness of each of the separate ones. In the business world, if you have a merger, it's assumed at the outset that the merger is going to be more efficient or more profitable than the sum of the components that went into the merger. What is a silo organization? A silo is a tall cylinder for farms that's used to store things like corn. In defense, used to store missiles. In business, it's typically a division that operates independently of other divisions and avoids sharing information. They are typically structured so decision-making is separated according to function, geography, and product. What is a matrix organization? That is one where there is dual or multiple managerial accountability and responsibility for the team members. Team members, whether remote or in-house, report to a project manager as well as to their home department head. Teams have value and benefits. They're synergistic, which leads to improved quality, productivity, reduced operating costs, increased ownership and stewardship, and increased commitment to the organizational mission. They also have value to individuals. Give the team members increased knowledge of interpersonal dynamics, a broader knowledge of business processes, new skills for future leadership roles, an increased quality of work life, and a sense of being part of something greater than what one could expect by accomplishing alone. Not all teams are successful. Some fail. Difficulty with teams is often blamed on cultural emphasis in the US on individual accomplishments rather than shared responsibility or success. Problems also caused by inadequate organizational support structures, like reward systems. They often reinforce individual performance. Here are some reasons teams often fail to reach their full potential, not just failing altogether. They fail to integrate cooperative work methods into the organizational structure. They lack organizational systems necessary to support the team process, like secretarial staff or, as I said, reward systems. They fail to prepare team members for their new roles. The impatience of top management for the time needed or the cost to get to the end of the thing. Inappropriate reward compensation system. Successful teams realize that working together on a project is more effective than working alone. Synergy again. The team operates best when each team member works with the other team members, but still brings their own perspective and experiences to the team. The team's outcomes are better than any one person could do on their own. So, what are the different types of teams that we may have? Functional teams have been around for a long time. They're comprised of people with similar professional expertise or skills. They all perform tasks specific to the function of the team. Functional teams are traditional or conventional, usually departments in a corporate setting, or usually permanent. They report to a supervisor or a leader, like an accounting department, or a software department, or a firefighting crew. They've been around, everybody knows everybody else, their strengths, their weaknesses, and The purpose is to achieve a predefined shared goal from a team perspective. The advantages of a functional team, they're organized by their specialization, which helps management assign them tasks. They're speedy because they have done this sort of thing for years, for a long time. They know how to do it. They know all the support stuff is in place. They just chug it on through. The work of the functional team is allocated, strictly controlled, and coordinated by a manager. There are some disadvantages, though. Segregation. Members focus on their narrow areas of expertise, which makes them isolated from the rest of the company's teams. Employees do not get to meet and share perspectives from other teams, which can be harmful for the progress of the business in general. Territorial disputes. These disputes have to do with disagreements over goals, budget completion, or issues that stem from a clash of egos or a strong sense of a common purpose is lacking. Decision-making is a prerogative of the leader, not individual contributors. Such an authoritarian approach can be very demotivating, and it doesn't take opinions of the team members into account, making them feel less important. Cross-functional teams. Representatives of various departments that have diverse functional expertise and skills working on the same objectives, which are decided by management, typically, like I described in how teams are formed. Team members work at finding best ways in which they can share information from their various departments to make operations of members of other departments better. A team leader monitors progress and helps settle disputes. So, examples of project management team, product development team, a city planning team. What's the difference between a functional team and a cross-functional team? Typically, a functional team is considered a silo type operation, whereas a cross-functional team is a matrix type of operation. The purpose of the cross-functional team is to put in place the team, which is matrix-based, rather than silo-based. The focus is obtaining general success of the organization as a whole rather than the specific departments. Each individual team member may come from a different department. Teams are usually formed for a specific purpose. So, advantages. Each team member is an expert in a particular area, which helps the team see various sides of the problem and look for unconventional solutions with more creativity and adaptability. Cross-functional work lets employees understand how departments are connected and affect each other, helping them share a common vision. Cross-functional teams foster innovation, collaboration, and diversity, and decisions are made by consensus of the team members up to a point. Obviously, the team leader will oversee that to make sure that the decision that the team members want is commensurate with the direction that management has assigned to the team for this particular project. Disadvantages: it takes time for the team members to get to work together. Conflicts may be caused by clashes of opinions. Communications. Functional jargon or terminology may be subject to misunderstanding. And the worst one is the dual supervision, where the team members are subject to supervision from the home division and the team division, which slows progress. Many times, cross-functional teams turn into silos if they learn to work together long enough and maybe enjoy more than one project. Along came COVID. Cross-functional teams, functional teams went out the window because you could not meet. Which happened? Zoom became a buzzword and virtual teams were put in place. The team members now use technology to collaborate on work tasks and activities. Virtual teams rely on computing and communications, especially internet access. Virtual teams can be functional or cross-functional. Examples, a service department, which is located in different states. Computer programming team. The same purpose to achieve a predefined, specific, common shared goal from a team perspective. Advantages. Virtual teams can be cost-effective and take advantage of technology and the availability of distributed employees. Talent can be hired in lower cost markets, which are remote. Improved employee retention rates because employees really liked the idea of working from home. And there are no commuting costs and lower carbon footprint for the corporation. Disadvantages, time differences may hinder progress. This is different zones. Collaboration, everybody does their own thing in their own time. Potential security risks using the internet, and the lack of camaraderie and social contact. Virtual teams were the answer to the COVID situation. COVID is, in the present day, is largely past. And we see a resurgence of management not liking the virtual team aspect of things. They would rather have the team members back in the office. This is kind of an offshoot of the command and control traditional management systems, which exists in many businesses today. Management wants to have control over their employees, see how they work, and not it's conventional, and they're much more comfortable with the conventional idea of things as they were rather than how they are. This is not, as I said, employees really liked the virtual aspect, even if it were a little bit different. So there's this conflict going on currently from both sides of that. Hybrid teams was a sort of a in between compromise. This is where employees worked partially virtual and partially come into the office, say 2 days a week. Hybrid teams can be functional, cross-functional, obviously, and it's the same purpose put in place for a specific predefined goal. The advantages of a hybrid team: it's an ideal option for employers that rely on freelance professionals. It's smaller office footprint, which reduce corporate overheads. Surveys show that hybrid employees have stronger connections with their peers, greater levels of engagement, and are more have more productivity than their fully in-office or remote peers, because they like the virtual aspect better. So they maybe work longer hours, or the hours that they want. Then there's an improved work-life balance. Disadvantages: less access to work resources and equipment like secretarial staff. Feel less connected to an organization culture. There's decreased team collaboration, and it's harder to maintain the corporate culture. I'll talk about corporate culture a little bit later. And the sense I just alluded to, that management does not feel that it has control, that it really is used to and desires when folks are not in the office. Self-directed teams, well, these are a little bit different, although they've been around for quite a while. They're groups of individuals who contribute their talents to work without the influence of traditional management-based supervision. They work towards company goals that are set in place for them by the outside leadership, upper management. Because there is not a managerial leader in place, members of a self-directed team make decisions for the project together, such as setting deadlines and rules regarding the project, and are accountable for most or all aspects of their task. Team members all have equal rights, and no one has authority over the others. The leadership function moves from one member to another as the need dictates. Examples are customer support teams, software games development teams, and actually terrorist cells. Think about that one. They simply meet, decide on the spot what they're going to do, although the overall mission hasn't been in place, and then they go out and do it. Purpose is to achieve a predefined goal, but without the traditional constraints of supervision or even corporate culture from a corporate perspective. Advantages. There's enhanced productivity and higher motivation. Employees can more effectively use their skills and spark innovation. There's a better allocation of resources and potential lowering costs because you don't have to hire or train managers. Allows the team members to take more risks. And there's a higher sense of belonging to the team with the team members. Disadvantages. It may be hard to implement where there is inadequate support during transition. Toxic team dynamics. Potential power struggles within the team about whether a particular member exercising leadership roles is acceptable to the other team members, even though that person may be the best qualified to lead the team at that particular point. Inequality in pay and productivity and can lead to groupthink, where group members withhold dissenting or unpopular opinions to avoid conflict. One of the things that comes up is, how does one reward a self-directed team? Because there's no team leader to assess individual performance versus team performance. And there are several ways to do this, which has to be thought out carefully. Management is not particularly happy with self-directed teams because they have no role to play and are standing on sidelines, but recognize the fact that the advantages may outweigh their particular feelings on this particular thing. Some of the things I ran into with the self-directed team I put in place for the copy products division in Kodak was that some members were not happy with self-directed teams because they are held accountable, and a lot of employees do not like to be accountable. They'd rather just be told, this is what you do, go do it, rather than coming up with, this is the job and this is what you figure out how to do it. Advantages. Can I do this? Yes. Okay, here's a pretty picture. What is this thing? This is the X-59, which came out of Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works, and I'm going to tell you what that means in a minute. NASA and Lockheed Martin rolled out the X-15. It's a quiet supersonic aircraft during a ceremony hosted by Lockheed Martin Skunk Works in California. Using this one-of-a-kind experimental airplane, NASA aims to gather data that could revolutionize air travel, paving the way for a new generation of commercial aircraft which can travel faster than the speed of sound. This thing was designed to fly at 55,000 feet, go 925 miles an hour, and as it crosses the sound barrier, the sonic boom is as loud as a car door shutting. A traditional sonic boom is very annoying. It rattles windows, wakes people up, and is really annoying. What is a skunk works? This is a term that was actually defined by Lockheed Martin. It's a small group of loosely structured people who research and develop a project, having autonomy and trust rather than oversight and micromanagement. Usually carried out in a remote location with complete secrecy, and usually with a strict budget and timeline constraints. This group is allowed to operate outside the normal procedures and systems of companies and has the freedom to develop new ideas and products. The team leader is critical, able to see the whole situation without focusing on details, be the ultimate decision maker with the ability to delegate both authority and responsibility, and be charismatic. So what's the difference between a skunk works and a self-directed team? Essentially, the fact that the skunk works has a leader and is done in secrecy. The skunk works project that I worked on in Kodak is the instant photography one, where it was carried out in a separate building, really tight security to get in and out of the thing, and absolute forbidden to talk about any of this, even with your family. Quite an interesting project, fun to work on. Examples of skunk works. Lockheed Martin in 1943, been around for a while, developed the first jet fighter in 143 days. Ford Motor Company developed a Mustang in 100 days. Remember, I told you, typically it takes 5 years to bring a new model out. And the Rand Corporation developed a satellite. They estimated the cost to develop it was $60 million. The actual cost was $32. Advantage of the skunk works: speed of development, team camaraderie, really high, project focus, and secrecy from competitors. Disadvantages: there's no guarantee of success. The failure rate of skunk works is high. Personnel returning to their parent organizations lose the morale high that they get from working on a skunk works project. And there's an internal jealousy from their fellow workers in the parent organization that this particular person got chosen to work on this thing. A lot of corporations today have skunk works in process. Some of them are Google, Microsoft, Walmart, Amazon, Ford, Nike, DuPont, all have skunk works projects, but we don't hear about them because they're so secret. So that's teams. Now we get into neurodiversity. We're going to take a break right now. So, what is neurodiversity? The definition from Harvard Medical School in 23 says that it describes the idea that people experience and interact with the world around them in many different ways. There is no one right way of thinking, learning, or behaving, and differences are not viewed as deficits. In other words, it's all of us, every one of us, which makes an individual individual. So that begs the question of what is a normal person or a typical person? A normal person is one who exhibits socially acceptable and appropriate behaviors. And that judgment is made by whoever is making the observation. So the definition of normal floats around quite a lot because everybody has a different notion of what normal is and what non-normal is. This line here is my version of a bell curve, but looking down at it from the top instead of from the front. So on the left, we have observably disabled folks, typically physically disabled, but also mentally or behaviorally disabled. On the right, we have normal, in quotes. And in between is what I call different, somewhere between normal and observably disabled. Many different folks, different, quotes again, people have skills and ability which are highly desirable and in demand. But many times these skills are coupled with corresponding undesirable behaviors or special needs. And we're going to get into that a little bit later on. An interesting example of some of this is that the best tennis player in the world is autistic, which would mean he would be down much closer to the left hand end of things than the right. So, diverse versus neurodivergent. Both of these terms are a function of bias and prejudice. Bias begins at birth. Infants become very wary of anything that's not familiar. And this bias is refined by society and life experiences. As a result, we all have obvious biases like skin color, gender, and age, which are common elements of diverse people. Less obvious are things like life experiences, wealth, education, and beliefs, all leading to a comparison in the eye of the beholder is what is different and or acceptable. Even less obvious are things like mannerisms, speech structure, thought processes, and behaviors, which are typical of many neurodivergent people, but still are considered different and therefore unacceptable. And these are known as invisible or unconscious biases. Many corporations have put into place diversity programs. These programs focus on the observable differences, but not so much as neurodivergent individuals. The case can be made that diverse programs and programs for neurodivergent folks are really very similar from the standpoint of bias, and therefore the approaches could be dealt with in a similar manner. The latest thing is, well, back several years ago, diversity programs were sensitivity training and political speech. Today's world is DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion, which includes the diverse and the less obvious things. Although I see very lately that DEI programs are being considered contentious, and many corporations are doing away with any DEI programs. From a business perspective, different folks, people are considered as employees. Businesses want to hire the best and the brightest because of traditional hiring practices. New hires, by and large, are normal people. Again, normal. This is conflictive because the greatest number of outstanding candidates are different rather than normal. In fact, the different folks in society outnumber normal people significantly. As you approach the right-hand end of my chart, well, different folks, there is invisible, remember, and what we call masked. The person is aware of the differences and hides them on purpose, so that whoever is hiring them thinks that they're more normal than not. The different new hires are typically excellent in the fields, and they appear normal, and they're masked, or whose abilities shadow their differences. This also depends on how neuro-inclusive a business is. Many businesses are much more tolerable of the differences of in the neurodivergent folks than others. Hiring is half the battle, but you also have to consider the retention of these folks. Research indicates that self-directed teams have had more positive effects on promoting corporate diversity than mandatory diversity training, performance evaluations, or even grievance procedures. Diversity training has not proven to be terribly successful. It's mandatory, and it sticks to the employees for 2 or 3 days, and then back to business as usual. Very, very little way to enforce that. Self-directed teams are typically made up of different people, typically because of their skills and ability to think outside the box. They think different. Having self-directed teams in the organization then leads to a tendency of hiring different people. The twofold win for businesses. They get better hires and better diversity. And in the long run, it's better retention. A neurodivergent perspective from the employee's perspective. Once hired, different folks, must continually mask their differences and endure the intolerance of their fellow employees in the behaviors that are not successfully masked. Intolerance from supervision and management often manifests itself as poor performance evaluations or promotions. In this is also true of diverse folks, not just the neurodivergent folks. Self-directed teams offer a sanctuary to different people, the neurodivergent folks, because the team members are typically all different, negating the need for masking. Acceptance for skills and ability over behaviors is much greater. Also, self-directed teams are by their nature, isolated from supervision and management with that set of biases. Let's talk about corporate culture. It refers to the values, beliefs, behaviors that determine how a company's employees and management interact, perform, and handle business transactions. Often, corporate culture is implied, not expressly defined, and develops organically over time from the cumulative traits of the people that the company hires. A company's culture will be reflected in dress code, business hours, office setup, employee benefits, turnover, hiring decisions, treatment of employees and clients, client satisfaction, and every other aspect of operations. It can affect employee hiring and retention, performance, productivity, business results, employee morale, and company longevity. There are 4 types of corporate culture: clan, adhocracy, market, and hierarchy. I'm going to talk about each one. Clan culture is about teamwork and collaboration. In this culture, those in management function as enthusiastic mentors who provide guidance to subordinates. Good relationship, encouragement, trust, and participation are the key aspects. The contribution potential of every employee is a component of clan culture. Clan culture can easily adapt to change and implement needed action quickly. Adhocracy culture creates an entrepreneurial workplace in which executives and employees function as innovators and risk takers. In this flexible environment, agile thinking is nurtured. Employees are encouraged to pursue their aspirations, ideas, and take action to achieve results that can advance corporate goals. New and non-conventional products and services are the main outcome of an adhocracy culture. Clan culture is most likely found in a silo type organization, whereas the adhocracy culture seems to be more matrix or cross-functional in the aspect of that perspective. A market culture focused on meeting specific targets and bottom line goals. This culture creates a working environment that's competitive and demanding. Manager is most interested in business results. Employees are encouraged to work hard and get the job done to enhance companies' market presence, profits, and stock price. Sometimes to the abandonment of quality or innovation. Hierarchy culture is traditional corporate culture that functions according to a company's executive management and staff structure. It follows the chain of command from top down. Executives oversee employees and work efforts to meet specific goals. Very much command and control environment, right? Something that was developed out of the military in the 40s. The work environment can be seen as more rigid than any other cultures, but employees can clearly understand their roles and objectives. They may also feel a sense of security because of a more conservative approach to running a company. Very much status quo type of environment. A neurodivergent perspective. Neurodivergent people want to work in their areas of interest and strength, much like most folks. Working on a challenging project is a high. Working with fellow neurodivergents is stress relieving. All of this suggests that the best corporate culture for neurodivergent folks is an adhocracy culture. Conclusions. A team's environment offers an enhanced business bottom line. For neurodivergent folks, a team's environment offers a better sanctuary from biases and therefore enhanced retention as employees. Self-directed teams done correctly offer businesses the best opportunity for faster project turnaround, lower costs, and higher diversity standards. Hiring neurodivergent folks is good for the business bottom line because they get the best and the brightest and the ability to work outside the box. The best team for neurodivergent folks is self-directed, done correctly. And the best corporate culture for neurodivergent folks is an adhocracy culture. So there we have it. Here's my information. If you need to get a hold of me, there's my phone number and my email address. I'm associated with Birch Price and Associates. You see the logo up in the upper right-hand corner. Birch Price is an organization which deals with the hiring, the and retention of neurodiverse employees, basically from a training perspective. Also, and associates of Birch Price are experts in this field of neurodivergent employees and the training of how to best work these folks into your organization from a hiring and a retention perspective. So, thank you, and that's it.